All right. I'm really
Yo.
excited to be able to talk with Julian today about building the next web. And Julian, you go back in the Webflow community. You've built a lot of different things. Excited to be able to talk with you today. Quick background, like first, what sort of how did you come up, and what have you been working on?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I've explained my backstory many times. Some people watching this may know, some may not, but I think it's an interesting story. So, I am pretty young and I started super young as well. And basically, at the start of my career, what I was doing was just building things on the internet for clients. I've been using computers since very young age. I built websites, gamed a whole bunch and all that stuff. So I really was just thinking, okay, there's a whole bunch of small businesses around me which they don't have websites, they don't have advertising, and they can't be discovered. So how can I help them do that? And so I did SEO. I did ads. And eventually I got more and more into websites, but at the time I was using like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, anything. And eventually the thing is, between those two options, you've got the Wixes and the Squarespaces that are super easy, super quick, but not the most extensible. And then you got WordPress, which is infinitely extensible, but not quick at all, not simple at all. So it was like there's a very big gap in the middle. And so eventually I got this one client who I actually found on LinkedIn and ended up building out a website for his client. We started working together. He introduced me to Webflow. And that was in 2018. And it changed everything because, again, I just wanted to do the best work for my clients. But I was stuck choosing between very difficult, very complicated, or very simple, but not very flexible. And so Webflow solved that for me. And so on the backs of that, started an agency, co-founded an agency, which I ran for about 3 years. And then in 2022, I ended up leaving that. That's its own story. I'll, save that one for another day. But I ended up leaving with a goal of just trying to become the best builder and really leaning into what it is that I like doing. And so what I did was basically I kind of built a reputation for myself as like the guy who can do anything with Webflow, like the things that Webflow was not made to do. Web apps, like anything. So eventually started working at MemberStack as well. Love the team at MemberStack, love the people at MemberStack, and just doing the same thing, showing people how to build anything. And then AI comes around in about, I mean, I'm talking like GPT-3 when it was first announced. And it was really cool for me because, like I said, as the guy who wants to do anything with Webflow, I often needed custom code. And when I needed custom code, I needed to contact a developer. Sometimes I was at an agency, we had one, MemberStack had some that I could ask. But like at the end of the day, I needed a developer. And so ChatGPT comes around. I'm like, whoa, I can write these custom scripts for my Webflow site without needing a developer. But that was it at the start. Then Wizzed. So I don't know if you've had a chance much to play around with Wizzed. I would describe Wizzed personally as a revolutionary product that launched at the absolute worst time it possibly could have. Because I was using ChatGPT to write these scripts on my Wizzed projects. And then I discovered Cursor. And when I discovered Cursor at that point, it was like, okay, I can just do this whole thing with AI now. I can build. But again, my whole shtick, my whole thing has been like, hack together an MCP, oh, geez, I'm going crazy,
MVP.
MVP, just use whatever tools you need to get a simple web app, whatever it is that you need to validate, launched. And that's a very specific thing, so it was like I was building everything with AI, but understandably, my peers were not. My peers being the freelancers, the studios, the agencies who built all around Webflow. And that made perfect sense because it just wasn't good quite yet for
Yeah.
those jobs. And this was, I would say, spring of 2025 that I started using Cursor and started really migrating my workflows all over to just being straight up AI. But again, still, that was for my project. So as time goes on, eventually tried out Claude Code, realized that, wow, I could really do anything. But then the time came where, the company that I was working with, we had to redo the site. And it was like, okay, we're going to redo it in Webflow. Yeah. 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 Obviously, we're going to redo it in Webflow. But then we just kind of ask the question of like, why though would we redo it in Webflow? Like, what is the blocker to just because we're using, for the most part, Claude Code, agentic tools. So it was like, why? So
Yep.
we go through all the reasons. Think about it. Think about it. Obviously, I did a video kind of explaining that whole thing, which, I'd love to share with anyone here. I'm not going to get too deep into that migration, but like, anyways, point is, migrated that whole site and it went amazing. The site is live. The site is great. I'm still working on that site with MemberStack. And at that point, and sharing that video, I think people started to look, not that it's like, wow, AI can do something amazing now that it's never been able to do. It was more like everyone's looking and knowing it's possible, but nobody's really pulled the trigger yet on a
Yep.
big, important site. Maybe a landing page here and there, fine.
Sure.
So that I think people saw, and it was really like, oh, wow, this is a viable option now. And then what happened after that was really just shock, I think, at how intrigued people were by the migration. And so talking about that, we're trying to figure out why isn't this more popular? Why is this, blowing people's minds? And so what we realized is pretty much that us people, whether we want to call ourselves the Webflow community, we'll get a whole bunch more into that later. I'm very excited to talk to you about that. Mason and I started talking about this. Amazing conversation. We're like, let's just wait. Let's just wait for the live. So I'm very excited for that. But anyways, you've got two sides. You've got these AI tools which are truly amazing and they're built for mass market. They're built for like your cousins, like walking on the treadmill, has an app idea, wants to build it on their phone. Very cool. Believe me, I have nothing negative to say about them. But for me, as someone who's been building sites and web apps professionally for, a while, it just feels cheap, for lack of better words. And then you have the dev tools, which I started using. So it's like Claude Code is what builds it. GitHub is where my code goes. Vercel is where my code is hosted. And it is absurdly easy to use. And it's, these are the, let's call it frontier technologies, which the best companies have been building products and websites in for a long time. This isn't some AI workflow. This is the workflow that pro developers are using just powered by AI so that people like, you or myself, well, I think you can probably code better than I can, but people who can't write the code, can do it now. And so, anyways, what that led to is building Ship Studio, which we'll talk more about Ship Studio. I'll do a little demo of Ship Studio, but at the end of the day, it's free, it's open source, it's not a host, it's not an agent, it's not a new way to build a website. It is taking all of the best developer tools, agents like Claude Code, Codex, OpenCode, whatever you want to use, all the best hosts, Vercel, Cloudflare, Netlify, whatever you want, putting it in one workspace that feels like the clean, polished experience that you're used to. And so that's what I've been working on. People are loving it. Actually, over the past like 48 hours, it has grown way faster than it ever has before. The community on Slack has grown by about 30% in the past 2 days alone.
Wow.
Thanks to just a quick mention in a big way from Timothy Ricks on a video where I don't know if you saw it, but he was talking about the current state of Webflow versus AI. So people are really starting to find it. I'm really happy about it. And again, I just want to make it clear like this is something that was made not because like, oh, I want to, make money off this and capitalize on the opportunity. And to lead this into the bigger conversation, I see where we as a community have made a mistake in comparison to what we've been doing with Webflow. Nothing against Webflow, by the way. But what I think we need as a community of builders is something that evolves with us, not something which has its own obviously private commercial interests and will evolve in whichever way makes sense for the company.
Yep.
So, Ship Studio started to get popular. I'm thinking like, yeah, I could totally, charge for this. Like I've asked a bunch of people and they're like, I'd happily pay, $100 a year. I could pay my bills off this right now if I want to, but the way I see it, the long-term vision, the long-term plan is that this isn't mine. It's ours as a community to build and to grow together. And then we all have a way to earn a living, not just me as the tool provider. So I could ramble forever. Mason, where does that take you? Where's your head at?
Oh man, I've got so many questions, and I think it's incredible to hear sort of like your journey, and I share a lot of that. I'd love to kind of dive into some of the realities that you saw with launching MemberStack on, because I think the problem out there is twofold. One of which is, we are living. I think the thing to kind of recognize is that whenever everyone says like, "Oh, this is like, transformational and disruptive technology," and like, what is that really disrupting? And well, one of the things that's disrupting is like not just how we build, but how we relate to one another around the ways that we build, right? Because I think that I was just talking with Josh Grant about how the platforms were always just an excuse to get together to be really excited to talk about building for the web,
Yeah,
and that's something that that's how we met, right?
yeah,
And the second thing is like there's so much hype that's out there. I actually love that you've open sourced the project to be able to kind of like separate out like commercial drivers from just like building,
yeah.
and there you can figure that out long term. And I think there's all sorts of different models there. Um, but I'd love to just, like peel back the marketing gloss and, what, like, let's say you're after 2 months, like, what was working really well? Let's just talk there. And then I want to get into what were the disasters, like because developing any technology, there's going to be something like
Always.
for background. We've been building in Webflow for 11 years. We've been building some of like, I would say the most complicated and large scale Webflow builds focused fully on enterprise. Um, and there's always something that, whenever you're
Always.
working at this edge that you're going to be kind of like breaking or making or whatever. So I commend you on working on the edge. I do think it's important to caution that like this might not be for everybody,
Yep.
or just know where could you kind of one shot something and like create, like a site for a dentist or something like something you might have gone and purchased a template before
Yeah.
versus like where you need to be able to, do something else. So let's talk about
Yeah.
what were the things you were just super excited about 1 month out.
So, I would say this again, we hadn't had any, I guess, benchmarks to be like, oh, these people did it and it worked totally fine. So
Yeah.
we were scared 100%. We launched all sort of projects that we've built with AI. I've launched all sort of projects personally as well, but nothing of this scale, nothing of
Mm,
this level of importance. Not a huge company by any means. We're
sure.
not talking about like the Nasdaq or something, but like,
Yeah.
for us small group of people, the site is everything. That's how we pay our bills. So
Yeah.
we were scared when we launched it. We were shocked because we like booked out the whole day. We're like, we're gonna watch when something breaks. We're gonna fix it. Nothing broke at all. There were a couple like little issues on the site that were carried over from the previous site, like typos, little visual issues, stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's something that you always have and is always going to be a problem. So nothing related to the stack. What were we excited about? And mostly I'll speak for myself and say what was I excited about. Um, the speed at which we could build new things. So the
Mm,
amount of times where we had new ideas for landing pages, new ideas for optimizations, things that we could try out before, not because, nothing against Webflow. Webflow allows you to do things quickly, but Webflow allows you to do things manually. So,
mhm,
it still takes a long time to go and design and write and build a landing page. Now that our build is completely AI native, it's like we get the copy doc from our copywriter, or if you don't have a copywriter, of course, AI can just do that for you. It depends on your budget, use your own judgment. But you could go from a copy document to a really good page in not long at all. You know,
mm,
at the end of the day, and I want to talk more about that whole like one shotting versus really just giving something your all. But the thing about AI is similar to Webflow. You could buy a template, swap out the colors and image, and just go live. You could one
Yep.
shot a site with AI, put in your pictures, and just go live. At the end of the day, it's going to be the same on both sides, and that is
Yep.
uninspiring, decisionless design. But
Yeah.
that's not always a bad thing. Like you
Yeah.
said, if you're building a site for a dentist, what are you going to sit there and think about? If it's a huge dentist office and they're paying a lot of money, then yes, don't just use a template. Don't just one
Yeah.
shot it. Put effort into it. But when you're building with AI, for example, so when you don't even have a homepage, you're like, make me a landing page for X, Y, and Z. You're going to get something very uninspiring right off
Mhm.
the bat because of what LLMs are. They're trained to predict based on the data that they have. And so inherently, you're going to get something uninspiring. But you refine, it's the same as design. You can't
Mhm.
just slap out a couple squares in Figma and hope that you're going to end up with the most beautiful, inspiring design. It takes humans. It takes effort. It
Yes.
takes, care. It takes years of experience and taste to build something that is truly amazing. And in that sense, AI is no different than building manually. It's just the
Yep.
tool at the end of the day. So, anyways, a couple other things. For example, like if you're A/B testing, it is so amazing. So, like on our Webflow site, we're using Optibase, and Optibase is amazing. I've actually worked with them, love the team, love the product, amazing tool. But again, everything in Webflow is done manually.
Mm.
That's how it's been. Obviously, there's some new AI features, some of which I haven't tried, so excuse me if I do miss anything.
Sure.
But it was great. Now we have PostHog connected to the site, and when we want to get a new A/B test running, it's as simple as okay, first make the variant. So okay, make another hero section this is bigger, that's blue, and whatever. Check it out, and then say okay, launch it as an A/B test. It connects using the MCP into PostHog, does all that for you, and then boom, you've launched an A/B test. You're done. Say B is the winner. Take it down. So the speed. At the end of the day, I think websites are just marketing engines. I think that's
Mhm.
pretty, universally agreed upon. And what matters is how quickly can you do what you want to do? How quickly can you
Yeah.
experiment? How quickly can you optimize? How quickly can you test? And we have been able to do all of that so much faster. And obviously, that's how I'm doing all of my new builds these
Mm.
days. And there's a lot of things, and I would encourage you to kind of like interview me about like the what about this, what about
Mhm.
that, for
Yep.
both for yourself and for anyone else who may be
Yeah.
watching this. But I do want to quickly, because you also said what were the disasters, and that's something that I think a lot of people are scared of, a lot of people think about, and I will say that so few negative things happen compared to what we were expecting. And I
Mm.
think that anyone who tries this process is going to see the same thing. But there is one very big thing, and a lot of people know this. How much do they know it? How much they talk about it or understand it? Who knows? But security. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, you can do unsafe things on a Webflow site. You could do unsafe
Yep.
things on a Squarespace site. I've seen people, for example, post a site to the showcase where they had their API keys hard coded into the page settings on
Yep.
Webflow. You can make bad decisions anywhere, but there's a
Yep.
very clear distinction between Webflow, Framer, or just all in one platforms versus building something from scratch with, say, Claude Code. And that goes down to the old saying with great power comes great responsibility.
Yep.
You have access to everything. You can change everything. You can break everything. With
At
Webflow, you
once.
can't at once. You
Yeah.
absolutely can. That stuff can happen. Now, when we talk about like, oh, I typed in a prompt to Claude and it broke my whole site, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never seen that either personally or with anyone else. I think it's kind of blown out of proportion. And along with that, you have version control. Like you can go
Yep.
back to any point in time and just click, oh, yesterday, I want my repo to be like it was yesterday. You're good to go. But there was a security incident that happened that I did talk about and I did publish, but I'd love to talk about it here to
Mm.
really illustrate the reality to people
Mhm.
and what they need to expect. So I was one day working on Shift Studio
Mhm.
and I go to basically, I made a feature and I'm like, let's go get it live. And Claude Code stops and it goes, stop. There's malicious code in your code base that's trying to execute something on your computer. And I'm like, what? That was terrifying, obviously, but I'm like, there's no way, there's no way.
Yeah.
So I asked questions. What is it? Where did it come from? How does it work? And then I looked at it, and yes, it was true. There was indeed someone had put malicious code in the code base. And we're looking and
How?
trying to figure out how did this happen? And so, it was a stressful day. It was a difficult day. It was getting to the bottom of it. But let me tell you what had happened. And this is why it's so ironic. Again, I told you how I discovered this,
Yep.
but then so what it was this there was something which was basically put into the code. So I want to explain this in a way that anyone, including just Webflow developers, can understand. So when you
Okay.
when you make a new feature and add it to your code base, there's something called a pull request, which is basically just saying like, hey, I made this new thing and I want to add it to the code base.
Mhm.
So this wasn't like, hacker123 issued a pull request. That would have been seen and shut down immediately and nobody would have cared. But what happened was it showed that I did a pull request. And I'm looking going, I didn't though. So what happened was somebody got access, and I'll talk about how in a sec, and basically made this pull request look like it was coming from me and doing something else when it wasn't. Scary stuff, scary stuff. How this happened at the end of the day was this. We, out of pure fear, I guess, I don't know,
Okay.
went, okay, we're going to hire a developer to constantly review our code, review the stuff that we're doing, and make any fixes that need to be made for, security, scalability, whatever it may be.
Yep.
So we hired this guy. Good guy, nothing against him, trust me. This can happen to anyone, including me, including you. But what happened was there was this big, large scale thing that was happening where basically what they did, they as in the hackers, the bad actors, they had fake job interviews with developers. And in the fake job interview, they told you, hey, go and, test out this GitHub repo, show us X, Y, and Z. But the GitHub repo infects their computers. And then it infects all the repos that they had access to. And so he had access to, our marketing site. He had access to our all
Oh,
of the stuff we were
wow.
working on. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it pushed all of this to all of these places. We caught it in time, we fixed it, and at the end of the day, at the time, we didn't have something called branch protections, which makes it so like if you issue, even if it looks like it's coming from me, it has to be reviewed by you in order
Yep.
to make it into the live code base.
Yep.
Point is, at the end of the day, this was actually, let me list the lessons in order here. First of all, great power equals great responsibility. So much
Yeah.
more can break and so much more can go wrong. This isn't
Yeah.
an AI problem. And I want to make that dead clear. People say that AI is a security risk, that's the problem. This is a question between all in one platforms and custom builds. This has always been the case. AI has not introduced anything new to
Yep.
this equation, unless we're talking about the fact that AI is what discovered this
Mm.
breach and then fixed this breach and then helped verify that it was fixed. Along with that, where did this come from? The developer who we had hired to review our code and make sure that it is safe. Again, nothing against him. This can happen to
Yep.
anyone. But the point is, you know, I think we need to stop looking at the conversation of like security as in, is this like a Webflow thing versus an AI thing? That's not the case at all. It's about custom builds versus platforms with managed security. And
Yep.
so, on that note, I think the good thing to mention is that if you are a company that has a lot of super sensitive data about your customers, about whatever, like healthcare, for example, where like
Yeah.
HIPAA compliance is a big issue, it may definitely make more sense for you to build out your site in a
Yep.
platform like Webflow or Framer, because at the end of the day, you need to manage your security.
Yes.
Whereas when you're using something like Webflow, Webflow manages your security. But I do think it is heavily blown out of proportion. And not to mention, when it comes to marketing sites, um, very often, what is your marketing site actually connected to? Someone hacks it, gets access to it. What can they actually do with that? That's not me saying nothing or everything.
Sure.
That's me saying that's a question that you need to ask on
Yep.
every project and say, okay, look, if we do build this with AI, the speed of optimizing the site is going to go up astronomically. So, everything in life, I've been saying this personally, professionally, is a trade off. This is no different. Everything is a trade off. In my
Uh-huh.
life and in my work, the trade off as of 2026 has always pointed me into building agentically.
Uh-huh.
But what I do for work is not necessarily what you do for work, is not necessarily what the people watching this do for work. And so that's it in a nutshell. There's always stuff that you have to consider, no matter what it is that you're using.
Uh, it- just wild, wild stuff. But I mean, first, you know, kudos to you guys for trying new things. Because it's so easy to go in and just be like, oh, armchair quarterback, like this is the way or whatever. And I think it's really important to sort of dog food it, right? So go and
Yeah,
take that idea, put it out in the world and be like, how does this work? We did this a few years ago where we were thinking about the future of the web and moving towards more of like conversation design and what's that going to mean
yeah,
for um, websites. And, 2 years in, it actually means that there's more optimization that we're doing in, you know, LLMs and, within Google and Perplexity and OpenAI. rather than the web looking like ChatGPT, right? So it's
Yeah.
like there's different ways all this stuff gets interpreted, but I think there's still a ton that we were ahead on where we were like, well, we need to go and structure our entire site around question answer pairs. That was a really good call.
Yeah.
And, from an AEO standpoint, there was things that we were doing that we didn't know would be AEO. Um, but I think the other thing that you're talking about, which is, you as a builder, and I think as a lot of builders, and I see some people coming in and into the chat and stuff like that, is now there's ways that we can accelerate that. And then
Yeah.
the thing to watch out for is how that acceleration can actually accelerate us into great things and accelerate us into not so great things.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious around, so you talked about security, and I appreciate you kind of mentioning sort of that reality. And, one of the things that can go wrong with a marketing website is like it could be content injection, it could be like things that start to violate, accessibility that then someone then goes and like sues you based upon something that is on your website that, was you didn't even put there, right? That a bad
Yeah.
actor could go and put there. Um, but what do you see as like, the management side of this and how well could something scale? Because like you're within a technical team. And I mean, generally, right? I mean, like you're
Yeah.
talking about pull requests and version control. And, I know here's like for me, like I don't use GitHub. I tried to install GitHub on my computer a couple years ago. Jared was walking me through it. And I was just like, there's like definitely a technical hurdle there to getting in and managing that. And I think that's okay. And I think as we were
Yeah.
just talking, like on the large scale enterprise where it's like you've got to get 50 people to be able to start to author, that's maybe not the place yet. But there's a large, and I think this is what we're really seeing from Webflow, whereas there is more of this, focus and emphasis on enterprise. And then there is a long kind of tail of like, and that's really, I think that long tail is where the innovation has always lived, you know?
Yeah.
And if anything, I feel like the the move to enterprise one of the hallmarks there is that enterprise software should be boring.
Yeah.
Like enterprise
Unfortunately.
software should be it should be the thing where it's just like, you know what? I don't need this I need this to be able to go from A to B to C. And now it's not to
Yeah.
say that like what Webflow is building is boring by any means, but it is to basically say that there should be a high level of confidence and stability there, whereas we
Yes.
can go through and find opportunities for innovation and kind of like boundary pushing opportunities in other spaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious though, because it's almost like full circle, right? Where it's like, hey, for a long time, it was like, hand code your website, and then you would hire a developer, and that developer would potentially manage that. And then there is these platforms that have come along to be able to kind of shape around that. And then now there's kind of the choice of like, do you build it or buy it? And, if you build it, then you kind of move into almost a managed services type of world. What do you see as the reality for, let's just go and take, the long tail of pizza shops, dentist offices, people that just need to have a website up, or a mid-market business that you've probably never heard of, but does 100 million a year in sales. It has a super small one-person marketing team. So
Yeah.
what do you think is the kind of like perspective there on just like how easy is it, or what does that sort of team dynamic look like in your kind of point of view?
So I would say that there's probably two different things to consider there, two different roles to consider there. And one of those roles is the person who's actually building the site,
Yep.
and another role is the person who's managing the site. So for the person who's building the site, something that I think we've maybe gotten kind of wrong is like, oh, a marketer can go and just build and manage a Webflow site. Like
Yep.
here's the thing. If you set it up as a developer for them well, they can manage it in the way that they need to. But as soon as they need to do significant changes, this is the thing that I think we're not talking about correctly is, you know, they still need a Webflow developer. Like
Sure.
it's not like just a marketer could just use Webflow to its, fullest potential. A marketer could use Webflow in a marketer's role as well as the developer has set them up with the ability to do so. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to start by talking about that developer. Webflow has a learning curve. Everything has a learning curve.
Yeah.
Building with AI also has a learning curve. If you hear me mentioning GitHub terminology, I will say, a year and a half to 2 years ago, I didn't know any of these words. I didn't even have a GitHub account. I learned these things by doing it. And the beautiful
Mm,
thing about building with AI is that you have a tutor by your side 24/7.
yep.
What you need to do if you don't know what you're doing is be very clear with AI. Like, hey, I'm new to this. I don't know what a pull request is. I've never used GitHub before, and it will explain things to you clearly. And something I find myself doing less and less, but I really did at the start, was I actually had it baked into the prompt, like the system prompt, the Claude MD file, is like, when you do something, give me the short and sweet always of what you did and what effect it has. So it's like I added, 10 pixels of padding. It's going to make the paragraph be farther from the button, and then explain to me like the in-depth below that. And just from building, I have learned now it's at a point where, look, I am the most technical person in a room of marketers. I'm the least technical person in a room of developers.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, I wouldn't look like an idiot in that room of developers because of these things that I've learned, which is, awesome. And then you have the marketers. And so I think that's something where, us as a community, we're kind of like hung up on, okay, our clients really like Webflow. And so if I like building with something else, that doesn't matter if a client isn't going to enjoy it at the end of the day. And that right there is going to lead me into showing you something super, super cool. So there are a lot of different CMSs out there.
yep.
This is something that I didn't realize until, let's say like 2 years ago. Headless CMSs. It's a CMS that you connect in whichever way you want, and you can, customize it to work in a way that makes sense. So if I share my screen, then what we can see over here is a site that I have. And here's the thing. I have this connected to my GitHub. I have this connected to my Vercel. Um, there are clients out there, the kind of client who wants to learn Webflow, like the, website lead within the company. This
Yeah.
is what they're going to learn. They're going to need a GitHub account. They're going to need a Vercel account. They're going to, have to use like Claude Code, Codex, whatever it is.
Yep.
But that's totally fine. These are the people who before they had to learn, client first or Lumos or Mass, whatever it is that they wanted to use. Like there's a learning curve for those people, and there's a learning curve for us as the builders. Um, so, in here, there's all sorts of stuff. We got a visual editor too that launched pretty recently, and people are quite enjoying it. So in here, you can have an experience, more like what you're used to in Webflow for tweaking things. And then over here, you just have Claude Code. This is like an XJS project. But then the question comes up of those marketers and what do they have? So what I have over here is the site. And this is local right now, but if this was a live client, they would be,
Perfect.
going to the site and doing the same thing. And you go to slash studio. And this is done with Sanity. So let me just hide this thing. You can still see my screen, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So what can a marketer do in Webflow? They can build new pages in the way that was set up by the developer using the components. They can change the text. They can edit the SEO information, all of the things that a marketer would typically need to do. And so using Sanity or something like Sanity, you can set it up in this way. So here I am on the home page. I want to change something. Well, I can simply click in here. We can see this pop up, and let's just change this to say like built to convert
Hmm.
really well. There we go. And then, well, spelled it wrong for a sec, but there we go. Then they want to build a new page. They need a landing page. They can go over to content, go to pages, build a new page, and just call it like useless slash useless because this is going to be deleted after. So there we go. That is saving. Now I can go over here and I can go to that page. Let's do slash useless. And as we can see, it is set up for us right here. And if I click into it, we can see everything. And then I click add item and I can see all of the components on the site. So for example, if we want to go and find like, the stats section or something like that, then the client would be able to write something,
Hmm.
write some stuff in there, nonsense, just to get this done with quicker. And then should be able to see that stats section update live. So the point
Cool.
is, at the end of the day, you can build for your clients. And I'd be happy to show more, answer any
Sure.
questions into that
Yeah.
process. But like, what marketers love is just they don't really necessarily care about dragging and dropping in this experience. They have a job to do. They have a campaign that they just launched. They need a page up quickly. And so that's where I think there are marketers out there who are really used to that kind of Webflow style, like add in sections from
Yep.
components, whatever it is. And there's an option for those people. But along with that, you can build out, let's say, like a Slack agent, which lives
Okay.
in your shared Slack channel. And then the client could be like, here's a brief from a landing page that we have in Google Docs. Go ahead, build it out on the site, and that would happen through AI. So the thing that's really cool about these custom builds is that you could do whatever it is that your client needs. When you're using, look, again, Webflow is a platform that's built for a specific use, and it is very well featured for that use. But when you start trying to do other things that are not within that use, you are limited by what the platform can do. That's nothing against Webflow, but
Sure.
when it's a closed system, that's just how it works. So when you're building in this open way, your client says, "Hey, could we have a, reporting dashboard built in where this is over here and that's over there?" Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, in that page builder that I showed you, could we add an AI chat which is going to build pages for the client only using the defined components? Yes, we can. You know what I mean? Which is really cool and empowering. But again, just to make it clear that everything's a trade off. At the
Yep.
same time, you're going to have to say, client, we are going to need to monitor your site.
Yep.
We're going to, in our retainer, we're going to charge you X amount monthly to go through everything, ensure there's no vulnerabilities, ensure everything's patched up.
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect. Nothing is 100%. Yes, let's do this. At the end of the day, think about horses and cars. Can you say that a car is better than a horse? Not necessarily. What if infrastructure goes down, there's no gas at the gas stations? Who's moving? The horse, not the
Yeah.
car. But,
Yeah.
it's a trade off. You can't
Yep.
say this is better than this. You can say this is better for these things, this is better for those things. And I, as a builder, so this is something that I really want to talk about is like our space and us as builders in a big way. We've, like you said, the tools are an excuse. We've rallied ourselves around Webflow, but like at the end of the day, what I think is so empowering and what I have loved since I started working with these tools is that I can sit there and say, this is the project. What am I going to use? Not this is the project. How can I fit this into Webflow? Because
Yep.
that I don't think is ever a good idea. That would be like if you're a handyman and you have a hammer and someone comes to you and they say, well, I need to change my pipes in the
Mhm.
basement. And you're sitting there and going, how could I use this hammer to beat this pipe off? You can probably do it, the little thing that turns, you smack it with the hammer, but like that's not the tool for the job.
Yep.
And so I think where we all need to head is just that Webflow is our hammer. We also have a drill. We also have a screwdriver. We also have a level, and we as professionals can make that decision of what's best for this project, what's best for the client, what's best for the business. And yeah, it's empowering, definitely.
Yeah. And I think you brought up quite a few things. And one of the things that I just wanted to really kind of dig into is this concept of enablement, because it's the thing that, especially as a service provider, and you're, talk, because someone will come to you and they'll be like, hey, we've got a website project. And you'll be like, okay, well, here is our budget. And our budget goes and includes all these different things. One of the big things is that we're going to try to design and build so that you can go and take on a lot of like the components that you were just looking at, right? So that we've done an audit, that there's a way where if you need to go and get a landing page up or whatever, and that doesn't matter, as you said, if you're building that with a screwdriver or a hammer or Allen wrench or whatever, like it has to get built. It's some place that is going to be configured and put together. And I think one of the things that gets skipped a lot is how, as builders, we're going to help change that organization and help them understand how to be able to take on maybe just like the 70 to 80% of like what their day to day needs to be. And then where they need to be able to go and pull in like, all right, well, we need to go and, you know, put a whole new room on or whatever. Um, and I think what you're showing is like really powerful, where it's like, all right, hey, let's go and get a lot of this stuff set up and we can have a conversation on what's the best harness to put around this, right? And I think that's the question that, we really have to dig into. And then it's like, is this a kind of platform or a managed service or like, whatever? Because that's I think those are the types of conversations that aren't being had. And what people are seeing is sort of again, a lot of the facade that can be on the front end of this, and maybe that first ticket. Because if I was to, so I've been working in digital for 25 years, like in the agency business for 25 years, which is really wild. I had to do some math there.
I don't know
But
how your hair is still brown in any way, shape, or form.
oh man, yeah, I'm getting a little gray in here though. But I've got a great team, so I will
There
say
you
that our
go.
team is just like, and it's a group of people that I feel so kind of honored to be able to work with every day, and we've been working together for, I mean, some close to 20 years. So uh, that's a long way of saying that, like, you know, the dirty secret in the digital agency business for a long time is sell the project at break even or a loss so that you kind of lock them in to a services contract. And I think the thing that people don't necessarily look at or consider is like, what's the support going to look like and how to be able to cost and estimate that. So I think no matter what kind of trailhead people are looking to go down, having a very clear picture of how they're going to support that, what they're going to take on, what they're going to hire out, is something that needs an additional conversation. So
Yes.
any thoughts you're thinking about there, Julian?
Yeah, so that is a big one where I think that we have become conditioned to this kind of career path of like, okay, the client needs someone to help them with Webflow, and so I'm going to
Yep.
learn Webflow, and then I'm going to be
Yep.
that person who can help them.
Yep.
So in a world where whether it's your client can manage the Webflow site themselves,
Yep.
I think this has been a problem or a topic for a long time. It's just becoming more popular now. Or in a world where hypothetically, to go with all of the, people going crazy on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it may be, of like, oh, your clients are going to replace you with Claude Code and this and that. We don't understand where our value lies because
Yep.
we have built ourselves around, I am a Webflow developer. Okay, what if I'm not using Webflow as much? What if I have a client that isn't using Webflow? I think the people who are really thriving right now are the people who figured out who they are before instead of just going with, the standard, let's say, career path. And so that right there, I am not immune in the sense that I really built everything around like, okay, I can make things work. Okay,
Yep.
so I was, whether it's a little social media platform, little, internal dashboard for businesses, like I could do that. And that was what I was doing, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So in a world where realistically clients would be able to do that stuff using some AI without my
Yep.
help, where's my value? And that's something that whether we're saying it or not out loud, I think a lot of us are wondering, where's my value in this new world? What is it that I'm providing to
Mhm.
my client? Which obviously then gets into like, how am I invoicing them? How much am I billing them? And how does all that work? And what I think, again, so my path in that, like I said, once I really started using other tools primarily, it was a big like, oh, what am I? Who am I? Like this existential crisis. But eventually thinking about it more, what I realize is what I love to do. And what I love to do is build cool stuff, document the process, and then teach other people how to do the same thing. And I will do that using whichever method is available to me that is as good as it possibly can be. And so, who am I? Where is my value? Well, I'm Julian, first of all. Nice to meet you. No, I'm kidding. But my value is in the fact that I am the person who will figure out the fast way to do anything. You're my client. Where can I help you? Well, what are you trying to figure out today? Oh, our landing pages are not doing too great. It's taking us a long time to run A/B tests on them. Our internal dashboard is useless. It doesn't give us any information. I'm the guy who's like, all right, let's get all that out of the way. Let's figure out the best way to do it from the ground up, make it work. And you're going to go, wait, it's been a week and you only charge me $5,000 and now all my problems are solved. That's me. And so when I'm empowered by technology, that is only a good thing. I'm not sitting here and wondering where's my value anymore. I'm going, what's the fastest way that I can offer this to my clients? And so, what I think we all need to do is sit there and look at it. What is it that I love doing? Who am I? For example, if you're someone who's like, you brand yourself as like the Webflow GSAP guy. Now you're working with Claude Code and you're like, wait, I'm not even using, who am I? Who's my brand now? If I'm the Webflow GSAP guy, you need to step back and accept that it was wrong to call yourself the Webflow GSAP
Yep.
guy. Webflow and GSAP were your tools. what you're
Yep.
doing is building beautiful interactive experiences for your clients. So forget, again, nothing against Webflow in any way, shape, or form, but forget about Webflow, forget about GSAP, forget about Claude Code, forget about everything, and just sit there and go, I am that guy who makes beautiful interactive experiences for myself,
Yes.
my client. Build your brand around that. Use the best tools available to you in the way that you like to do it. And that is where I think this is going to make all of us better. This
Yes.
moment in our history as an industry is, in my opinion, a very positive one, because instead of tying ourselves to, like, I am this tool provider and that's it, we're all realizing that's not sustainable. You know,
Exactly.
not even just because of the tool. What if you decide, 2, 3 years ago, like in my opinion, Webflow was doing amazing, but what if you just
Yeah.
decide you prefer Framer? You know,
Yeah.
don't build your brand around Webflow because that isn't, a fixed thing. Neither
Yep.
is Framer, neither is Claude Code, neither is anything. Be the person who gives your clients what they need in the way that you are uniquely positioned to do.
100%. I can't. I was scribbling down so many notes over here as you were talking, and yeah, I was just listening as well to a podcast, and they were talking about separating that, like, you know, the thing that you do from your personality, right? But I think you're taking that one step further, which is like separating kind of the tool from the identity, which is
Yeah.
important. And yeah, I think there has been sort of there is this, I think it's so easy to become enamored by the tools and then
Yeah.
forget what is the thing that we're trying to deliver at the end of the day.
Yes.
As sort of an old soul in this space, when we started Edgar Allan, the idea was very simple, which is just like have great stories,
Yeah.
and I think for us, it's always been about how can we help to shorten that distance for teams to not just tell a story, because I think that's one of the other things that gets lost in advertising is like, oh, it's about storytelling. It's like actually not. It's about like, how do we listen deeply? How do we understand with an audience and then have something to share? So that's the
Yes.
having, right? It's a back and forth. And when we've thought about, well, how do we make that happen? Because when we started, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working in AEM, Adobe Experience Manager, which is a disaster even today. Anyone from Adobe that's listening, I will happily do a build off with anyone that's a gold partner or whatever. Like, I would just love to be able to do that. But it just like takes so long. And so by the time you've listened and understood and been able to have some sort of research and get it out into market, the moment has passed.
Yeah.
And I love, you said, build stuff, document, and then one other thing. What
Share
was
it.
that?
Teach people
Share
how
it.
to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, for us, as something that I've tried to think about, like, what is an agency? An agency is just a group of people who believe in one another and work towards a shared mission,
It should
and
be.
it should be. Well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's how we built our team. And I think that we live that. But I think this idea of looking beyond the build and even moving, and I think the thing that's exciting about the web is that the web is moving from a series of brochures that we would sort of build and put out into the world. And maybe, a brand would redo this every 24 or 36 months or something. But it's like, it should be ephemeral, and it should
Yeah.
be what we build should be about how are we helping a brand connect with another person, and how is it that we are helping again to have that brand have a great story with their customers? And so
Yeah.
that's what's exciting, that the aperture of the web is opening up. If anything, I think that um, the silos of the web need to be broken down. Like the idea that you're going to have an SEO agency that's working totally separate from a brand agency that's working separately from a web agency, or like whatever that
Yeah.
is. I think that's totally broken and wrong. And so
Yeah.
the idea that, you know, that I think you're excited about and I'm excited about is how do we build not just faster, but better, and have outcomes and impact for a company that really helps to move the needle, not that we just put pretty pictures on a
Yeah.
page. We've got a question here, and so I'd love to dig in to the chat. So um, kind of a longer one here. So curious on, I'm going to try to like summarize this. I need like an AI summary because I'm trying
Yeah.
to trying to read this. One thing I keep running into, Webflow clients are used to editing everything themselves, but a coded build changes how they maintain the site. Or new clients who insist on building the website in Webflow, how do you explain this to them? Do you walk them through how to manage it in Sanity? How do you get the clients to actually accept the trade-off? Any experience you can share there? So let's go and start with this. And then there's a separate question that we'll dig into right after this. Also,
Yes.
anyone out there in the audience, you have questions, throw them in. Julie, I don't know how you're doing. I don't have a hard stop at the top of the hour, so if we need to go over a little bit, we can. But I
No,
also want to
what?
keep it short, and I also want to continue this conversation, so we don't have to cover everything today.
Oh yeah, no, I would love to do this again. But as for me, I am totally open right now, so we can keep going until the conversation hits a point in which we should stop it for now.
Awesome.
So on the first one, honestly, I would say, let me just see. Wait, where did you see this? Ah,
So
okay, yeah. So there's two here. There's one first from Stefan. Um, Thank you. So the budget, and if we compare Webflow and a custom stack for a simple marketing landing page, especially for a pilot project, a custom stack could be more efficient, but it could also change and become more expensive. Yes. Okay, so that's something right there, I think. And I've talked a lot about the fact that you can get free hosting with, let's say, something like Vercel or Cloudflare, and that is true. But to say that it is cheaper than Webflow or that Webflow is a bad price, I just don't think that's true at all. Because it depends on the project. Where I think custom projects stand out is their pricing scalability. And what I mean by that is this. My portfolio site, just my, juliangalluzzo.com, I don't want to spend $20 a month to keep that live. I just don't. And I think we all have at least one site in our, spheres, which is like that. Maybe it's a small business, the local taco truck that you just built them a site because you wanted to help them out. And, they're fine with it. It's cool, but like they're paying $30 a month. That right there is where, again, you build the site, have it in GitHub, and then host it with
yep,
Vercel for free. On the hobby plan, some people have talked about they don't want you to do that and stuff. They're fine with it. Again, where it starts to become a problem is where you have a bigger site.
yep,
So what if it's a small personal site, small business, it is cheaper to have a custom build for sure. End of story. Where it starts to change is once you're talking about bigger sites.
yep,
So the pricing model is different. You can't say one is cheaper than the other. You just simply can't. I would say that once you get into bigger sites where the site actually really matters to the company, we're not talking restaurants here, we're talking smaller SaaS businesses, whatever.
yep,
Let's say like MemberStack, for example. At that point in time, the site is so important to them that it doesn't matter so much what it costs. Like think about your clients at Edgar
yep,
Allan, whether they're spending, 1,000 or 5,000 a year on hosting, they don't really care that much. The, stability matters to them, the uptime matters to them, the platform matters to them, but these, here or there kind of like $5 more, $10 more, they literally couldn't care less about. Like you've spent more money by even asking them if they
yep,
care about that. You know what I mean? So the pricing conversation, the way that I would put it is it's per project. It depends. Tiny
yep.
projects are going to be cheaper custom. Once you get into medium and large projects, it's give or take. It might be cheaper with Webflow, might be cheaper with this, but at that point, the price doesn't matter as much. So that's my topic on the pricing side of things. And then the next question from Philip here
One
is,
question, or one thing I'll
yeah,
throw on there as well is, and this is a mindset. I think that for anyone that's starting off and curious about what to charge or whatever, but focusing in on that end value and understanding that marketers don't get fired for spending too much; they get fired for not providing enough value. So as long as we're able to go and put numbers on the board, that's the thing that we're being tasked to do ultimately.
yeah,
And yeah, for a portfolio, a band site, that's where it's like that's where I think a lot of what you're talking about here makes sense. And then as you
yeah,
start to scale up the responsibility that web property needs to address, because that web property is one line in a spreadsheet and someone's in a CFO spreadsheet on the revenue that it is supposed to deliver for the business.
yeah,
And so it's like, okay, what are the ways that we're going to manage risk, that we're going to help push the business forward? And then how do we go through and pick both a provider and a platform that
yeah.
meets those needs? So let's keep going.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, when it comes to Webflow clients being used to editing everything themselves, that is somewhere where I would say when you have a custom project, again, you could do anything. So I don't know if you were around at, I think it was like maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago, I was showing a sanity setup with all different components. So I could actually super
Mm.
quickly just show that again, just for anyone who wasn't here at the time. And the point here is this: if your clients want something like Webflow, so here we have like a full page builder. I could go click in immediately, edit the content. Hello, Philip. Oh, I spelled your name wrong. Filiope. Philip, there we go. Add some new stats. So the point is, if your client wants that visual editing experience, you can give that to them. End of story. So if your client's like, wait, I'm used to this, I like this, well, you can do it. Just say, okay, sure, we'll set it up for you with Sanity,
Mm.
we'll build components. I'm going to be releasing a starter project for that. So it's like out of the box, like componentized, kind of client ready.
Yeah.
So that's going to be in Ship Studio pretty soon. Join up there if you're not already there. But along with that, I think something that's a really big win for us in all of this is that Webflow has built such a great editing experience for clients. Again, if it's set up correctly by a developer, I always want to make that clear because Webflow out of the box isn't client ready. It's client ready if you, as the service provider, make it
Yep.
client ready. But now the thing is, Webflow, again, it's out of the box, made for a specific kind of business, and it works really well at what it does. Here is a bit of a black box. Here is in custom builds, in the sense that if you want to do that, you can do that. If you want to have
Mm.
that componentized drag and drop experience, you can do that for your clients. If your clients want to manage it through a Slack agent, they can do that. If they want to jump into Claude Code themselves and learn it and manage it, they could do that.
Yep.
So really, where I think the best thing to go is like, if a client wants to build with Webflow, I don't think that you should ever be set on trying to move a client away from Webflow or bring a client onto Webflow. I think our job in a big way as a service provider is to look at what our client needs and genuinely determine, is this best for you? And then guide them in the way that they see fit. And so,
Sure.
if your client's like, I love everything about Webflow, it's perfect for me, you should see if they know that other options exist, because maybe they don't. I've had some people who I've talked to, they're like, Webflow's perfect for me. And then
Yep.
5 minutes into showing them like a custom build with Shift Studio, they're like, no, this is perfect for me. But the point is, that's not going to be all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes Webflow is the perfect choice for the client, in which case go with Webflow. The goal for us as service providers is to dig into what our client needs and then set them up in the correct way. Um, so really that's where I would put that. There's no sort of like, I'm not going to say there's no trade-off. Obviously, I've made it clear there's definitely a trade-off with like Webflow versus custom versus Framer versus WordPress. Everything has a trade-off. But when it comes to client editing experience, it's just the trade-off in this case is that
Yep.
Webflow has that out of the box, whereas you'll have to set up whatever you want in something like Sanity. But the
Yep.
other trade-off is that Webflow is set up the way it's set up, whereas this, you can customize it to your client's needs. And so that, I hope, answers that question. If not, if you want any clarifications, just let me know. Agents like Hermes or OpenClaw, yeah, I have. And I think like most people, I tried it. I was blown away by it. I was like, this is the future, and then I just stopped using it for the reason that it eats tokens and it's not cheap. Not that, again, everything, I think cheap is, it's not an objective term. You know, if somebody gets rent for, I mean, depends on where you live, but whatever. Let's say here in Canada, if your rent is $1,500, that's like, whoa, that's cheap. And then at the same time, you buy a pack of gum that's $3, and it's like, that's expensive. So it's not that those agents are expensive by any means. It's just what I was using it for. It wasn't worth it. I was using it as like a to-do list and stuff. But making agents for things is,
Yes.
I think, incredible. There's so many different things out there. Like at the end of the
Yep.
day, we talk about, okay, for example, QA engineers. That's a job. That's something
Yep.
that in a big way agents can do today. And a lot of
Yes.
people then go into like, the human aspect and the moral qualms about replacing humans with agents. And I think at the end of the day, while there are victims in that process always, that's how humanity has evolved over time. I'll never forget, I was in Barcelona in 2016, and there were these protests about Uber,
Yep.
because the taxi drivers were livid about how the government was allowing Uber to exist here, but the people were choosing Uber. And in that whole debate, it's like, what about the taxi drivers? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Well, the unfortunate reality is there's a lot of people who were taxi drivers for 20, 30 years, and then now that position is being threatened.
Mhm.
Um, they, as an individual, need to figure out, and again, that's where the problem is. If you go, I'm a taxi driver, well, then, you know, you might be screwed.
Mhm.
That's it. But if you
Yep.
go, I transport people, I move people from
Yep.
A to B,
Yeah.
well, then it just becomes where's the best place to do that? Is it taxi? Is it Uber? And then, I'm sure there's other issues with Uber
Sure.
and all this, but that's neither here nor there. Um,
I've
I
heard
yeah,
that explained as, does AI remove the drudgery that allows you to think at a higher level? Or is the drudgery the thing that keeps other people out from entering into that market? Right. And so for what you're
yeah.
just talking about, the example is, and might be delayed a little bit on internet. I think my kids just got home.
I can hear you
Um,
loud and clear, so that's what
Okay,
matters.
that's all that we'll do that.
Yeah,
But you go and look at, surprisingly, so yes, on the drivers in London, right, that had to go and memorize what was called the knowledge. They had to
yeah,
memorize the every single street within London before you could become a driver. And
that's
then,
insane.
that's like a incredible amount of time you have to spend just to be able to drive the car. And when Uber came in, obviously, like, the wages that they were going to make flattened or went down.
Yeah,
On the flip side of this, that you have people that work in accounting and finance, and when they could spend less time just doing the drudgery of working in doing bookkeeping and things along those lines, they could actually do more around financial planning and how to make your money work for you and what that really starts to mean. So
yes,
that's a long way of saying, and this is like probably a totally different topic that I've been thinking about, but moving from the idea of, we've been in an information age and we've been knowledge workers working with that information to now we're working with knowledge tools. And what does that mean is that we need to be what I would say are called wisdom workers. Like you have to have the wisdom to know
yes,
why something that you're going to do is important and how to be able to navigate these series of knowledge tools. So,
yes,
um,
very
and then,
much.
a question here on, I don't know how you say this, ploy, from
Yes,
Brian Chow. I've not tried it.
it was
Uh,
just announced today. That's
oh, well,
that.
there we go. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'll have to text Bryant and congratulate him and yeah, try to talk with him. I was able to get a preview a couple months ago, and it's really really cool what he's working on and building. And I think this actually gets into what we were just talking about, which is his kind of thing here is that you can add. It sounds like pre-trained agents to be able to go and take on hopefully what is the drudgery, like fix the
yes.
you know, metadata for these pages on whatever it might be. So yeah, good on Bryant for doing something cool and new. And yeah, maybe this is a good place to kind of wrap up. But Julian, kind of final words. And what I'd love to do is keep this conversation going for other people that are out there. If you have questions, throw them in the chat for like either on Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn. Like this video will live in all of those. And the other thing that we didn't even get to talk about today is how to define and I would say rally this group of builders.
Yeah,
That for a long time we have kind of associated ourselves and said like we are Webflow builders, but I think we are builders of the web who use a variety of tools. Obviously, we are super. I have a whole thing on how bullish I am on the future of Webflow. I feel like it is about to be in a golden period. I'm very excited about this. It is going to be totally different though. It is
yeah.
going to be
It
within
has
the
to be.
it has to be. It's going to be within the enterprise space. Um, it I see it taking on in a very meaningful way Sitecore, AEM, Drupal, even WordPress. for these Fortune 5, Fortune 1000 companies. That is a
Yeah.
very different business and model than they have been in, but it is their time to be able to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the bigger thing to talk about is the aperture of the web. Um, we it's interesting as we've gotten into the profound kind of like space and really digging into AEO. There are so many like SEO nerds that are out there and I love them to death, but like they aren't hanging out with like the Webflow nerds. It's like it's high school and we have two different tables, you know? And I'm like, we
Yeah.
need to get these tables together, right?
Yes.
And then the PR nerds are over here and they're doing something totally different. And I'm like, guys, we gotta find better ways to work together because it is all very much linked. And so
Yes.
that's what I'm super excited about. And I think trying to get more people to have just the conversation. And Julian, I think like you're so well versed in this and that, you know, build stuff, document it, and share it is really what this moment needs. And I appreciate
Yeah.
you jumping on today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to having more of these conversations. I think we all really need it because again, we're all defining this together. But yeah, I think honestly, just to quickly comment on the whole different like cliques in high school that we are with the SEOs and the web flows and like the Webflow and Framer people aren't even talking to each other.
I
Like
know.
we're doing the same thing. What we're the same people. It's just like you use a DeWalt screwdriver and screwdriver drill. You use a DeWalt drill and I use a Milwaukee. Like
Yeah.
well, we should be at the same table at the end of the
I mean,
day, but
everybody
we're
knows that
not.
DeWalt is better though. So just to be fair,
Yeah, no, if you use a
I'm
Milwaukee,
just
get
kidding.
out
I'm a
of here.
DeWalt guy, but I have a good friend who's Milwaukee and I don't hold that against him. I
Exactly.
mean, you know, and what's great is like, we're both just building, you know, and I think being able to talk about it from that
Yes.
perspective.
That's the difference. That's the difference. If you take a step back, you look at it, we're quite literally splitting our tables based on Milwaukee versus DeWalt, and it's silly. And
Yep.
people don't do that. Like handymen don't do that, you know,
Right.
maybe, or, you know, your truck
And
guys.
they
You got,
might.
I love Ford, I love Chevy, I love Dodge, this and that. But it's like, we're not, well, I mean, maybe the weird truck guys are doing that. But, anyways, the point is, um, we all, in my opinion, thanks to AI, get to have, because the thing is, there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only 8 hours in the workday or whatever, how long you work. You, up until now, have only had the time to really go deep into one thing because it was all about that knowledge. Whereas now, I'm developing, I'm designing, I'm doing AEO, I'm doing SEO, I'm doing, you know, PR, I'm doing marketing, I'm doing awareness. And at the end of the day, not like, oh, I'm amazing and I've replaced anyone. You know, my focus is in making things work. It's really in the, I want to say, like, translating business problems into technical problems and then delivering on those. That's my area. Some people are going to be really focused on PR. Some people are going to be really focused on AEO.
Yep.
Some really focused on design. But at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. And that's the beauty of it. What use is me sitting here with 10 other people who are the exact same as me?
Yep.
Nothing. What can we learn from each other? Nothing. Whereas if I'm sitting here with someone else who, you know, they build websites, they build web apps, but like they're the AEO pro, that's
Yep.
who I want to sit down and talk to because I'm going to teach them something and they're going to teach me something and we should all be at the same table. And I think the way, and again, this I think should be its own conversation. So let's talk after and see how we can
Okay.
structure that. But like, just how can we rally people together to understand this? And instead of having a kind of fearful moment of like, oh, the industry's changing, where does that leave me? To get people, I think, on the level where you and I are at, which is we're not, you know, we don't know everything. We
Mm.
know some things, we don't know other things, but at the end of the day, you're confident about the future. You're excited. I'm confident about the future. I'm excited. And I think we all should be. And I want to help people get to that point, rally together, join up, make friends, and just get the gang together like, you know, back in the day. So,
I love it. Yeah. I'm so excited about this. And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining in. I mean, I've just been watching the numbers. We've got a really good kind of crew of people that have been hanging around. Appreciate the questions. Uh yeah, I'm gonna try to see if we can get Bryant on to talk about what he's been building. And Julian, I think we're gonna have to get back on and just
let's do it.
again continue this conversation. Maybe we'll get a panel together. I'm not totally sure, but I'm having a lot of fun trying to get away from the keyboard and just talk with more people. And
Yeah.
so today I think has just been a great example of doing that.
Love it. Love it. We'll be in touch. We'll do it again. If anyone doesn't know where to find me, my last name underscore first name on X, go to Ship Studio, ship.studio, join the Slack community. I love talking about all this stuff. So, Mason, I almost just called you Edgar. Hey, I gotta ask super quick. Edgar Allan, your last name is Poe.
Correct.
Was that intentional?
So I'll tell you two stories. The
Okay.
first is that starting the agency, I wanted to take a story first approach. And
Yes.
with this really simple idea of having great stories, and that I also wanted the name of the company to feel distinctively human.
Yeah.
And this is, again, back in 2013.
Yeah.
So that's when we got started. The short second story is that my last name is Poe. Everyone has always asked me if I was related to Edgar Allan. And I don't know if I am, but now I can say that I am, and that our company is named after Edgar Allan.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I have some weird deja vu. I may have asked you that when I saw you in Serbia, but I had to again. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Hopefully
and
someone else
I think
learned.
yeah, oh, I think it's great. The other thing you'll notice that like I actually don't use my last name when I'm on like a live stream or something along those lines, and it's like this thought grenade where it'll be like 5 minutes into a conversation and be like, wait, your last name is Poe, and you work at Edgar Allan. Did you pick working at Edgar Allan because of your last name? And I'll be like, yes, yes, I did. So,
I love it. I love it. Mason, thank you so much. I'm very
yeah,
excited to speak to you again. Let me know anytime. I'll be there.
listen, let's do it. Awesome. Hang around for
Sweet.
a second, and yeah, we'll stop the live stream. But good to see
Sounds
everyone.
good.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.